Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we are tackling a pretty important topic, food insecurity.
Absolutely.
But we're going to zoom in a little bit and focus on how this problem is being tackled specifically in Hispanic communities across the U.S. We've got a ton of great sources to dive into for this one. We've got research articles from experts in the field.
Great.
We've got firsthand accounts from families who have experienced food insecurity.
Wonderful.
And we even get a little peek behind the scenes at Brighter Bites, which is an organization that's doing some really incredible work to make a difference.
Yeah.
So get ready, because this deep dive is going to be both informative and inspiring.
I'm excited.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Can you give us just a quick overview of just how widespread this problem of food insecurity is in Hispanic communities?
Well, it's really alarming when you look at the statistics. In the U.S., Hispanic communities are disproportionately affected by obesity and diabetes compared to other groups.
And that's a problem that we really need to pay attention to.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially considering that the Hispanic population is projected to grow significantly in the coming years.
It is, and that's why this issue is only going to become more and more urgent.
So we need to act now.
Yes.
We need to start addressing these issues head on.
Right.
And it's not just adults we're talking about here either.
No, you're absolutely right. We're also seeing incredibly high rates of obesity and type 2 diabetes in Hispanic children.
And that's really concerning, because we know that these health problems can have a lifelong impact.
Yes, and it just underscores the need to intervene early.
Absolutely. Like, we need to nip this in the bud.
Yes.
But you know what I don't get?
What's that?
We hear all the time about how there's an abundance of food. Like, there's more than enough food to go around.
Yeah.
So how is it possible that food insecurity and obesity can coexist?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a bit of a paradox. You see, while food supply has definitely increased,
Right.
access to healthy, affordable food is still a major barrier for many, many families.
Like a physical barrier.
And a financial one as well.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this. Almost 2/3 of kids in the U.S. don't eat enough fruit.
Wow.
And a staggering 93% fall short on their recommended veggie intake.
93%.
93%.
That's wild. Okay. So clearly there's a disconnect somewhere
Yes, there is.
between the amount of food available and people's ability to actually access and afford the healthy foods they need.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, this is where Brighter Bites comes in, right?
Yes.
They're trying to bridge that gap.
They are.
So tell me, what are they doing differently to tackle this complex problem?
Well, one of the things that makes them so unique is their three-pronged approach. First, they deliver a substantial amount of fresh produce directly to families every single week for 16 weeks.
How much are we talking here? Like a couple apples and a bag of carrots?
Oh, no, this is way more than that. We're talking about 30 to 35 pounds of produce.
35 pounds.
Per week.
That's like a whole grocery haul.
It is quite a lot of produce.
So where do they even put all that food?
Well, that's part of the beauty of the program. They're not just dumping a mountain of produce on families' doorsteps.
Right.
The second part of their approach involves providing these families with tons of support to use all those fruits and vegetables.
So they're giving them the tools and knowledge to actually incorporate these foods
Yeah,
into their diet.
exactly. They provide bilingual handbooks, recipe cards with easy-to-follow instructions, and all sorts of tips on how to store and prepare different kinds of produce.
That's really smart, because I know sometimes I can get a little intimidated by unfamiliar produce.
I know what you mean.
Like, I'll see a weird-looking vegetable at the store, and I'm like, I don't even know what to do with that.
Yeah.
But if you have recipes and you have tips and it's all laid out for you, it makes it a lot less daunting.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what Brighter Bites is doing. They're empowering families to feel confident and comfortable using all those fruits and veggies.
And I imagine that's especially important in Hispanic communities where there might be specific cultural dishes and preferences.
You're exactly right. Brighter Bites understands the importance of cultural sensitivity.
Right.
So they're making sure that their materials and recipes align with the food traditions of the families they're serving.
I love that. It's about meeting people where they are and respecting their cultural heritage.
It is.
Okay, so we've got the produce, we've got the education. What's the third part of the Brighter Bites approach?
Well, the third part is all about making healthy eating fun and engaging.
Okay, fun is always a good thing.
It is. They incorporate recipe demonstrations and taste tests into their program.
Oh, that's cool. So it's not just about reading about healthy food, it's about actually experiencing it.
Exactly. They want families to see how delicious and enjoyable healthy eating can be.
Because let's be honest, sometimes those unfamiliar fruits and veggies can look a little intimidating.
They can.
But when you get to taste them prepared in a delicious way, it changes your whole perspective.
Absolutely, and that's what Brighter Bites is aiming for, to create positive experiences around healthy food that will encourage families to incorporate them into their daily lives.
It sounds like a pretty solid plan.
It is.
But do we know if it actually works?
We do. Several studies have been conducted to evaluate the effectiveness of Brighter Bites.
Okay.
And the results are really promising. They've seen significant improvements in both the dietary habits of children and parents.
That's fantastic to hear. It's one thing to have a good idea. It's another thing to actually see it making a difference in people's lives.
It is, and that's what makes this program so exciting.
So tell me, how do they actually gather information directly from the families who participated in Brighter Bites?
Well, they did something really unique.
Uh-huh.
They used a method called photo voice, which basically gave a voice to low-income Spanish-speaking families.
Photo voice. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that.
So essentially, they asked these families to take photos that captured their experiences with Brighter Bites.
So it's like visual storytelling.
Exactly. And then they facilitated group discussions where families could analyze those photos together and share their insights and perspectives.
It sounds incredibly powerful, like you're tapping into a whole different level of communication.
It is very powerful.
What were some of the things that families were saying about their experiences while they were still in the program?
Well, one of the biggest things that emerged was the financial impact. Participants said that Brighter Bites helped them save a significant amount of money on their grocery bills.
How much are we talking?
About $30 per week.
$30 a week. That's a huge difference, especially for families who are struggling to make ends meet.
Absolutely. It can make or break their ability to put healthy food on the table.
So it's not just about providing food. It's about easing that financial burden and making healthy choices more accessible.
Precisely.
What other insights came out of those photo voice discussions?
Well, another thing families talked about was the increased variety of produce they were exposed to thanks to Brighter Bites.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I get stuck in my grocery rut.
I do too.
I buy the same things week after week, but having that variety really opens up a whole new world of culinary possibilities.
It does, and it encourages families to try new foods that they might not have even considered before.
Absolutely. Like, I bet there are kids out there who are discovering their new favorite fruit or vegetable thanks to Brighter Bites.
I bet there are. And you know, this increased variety isn't just about making meals more interesting.
Right.
It also makes it easier for families to make healthier choices throughout the day.
Because you have more options on hand.
Exactly. If there's a bowl of fresh fruit on the counter, kids are more likely to grab that for a snack than a bag of chips.
It's all about making healthy choices the easy choices.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the produce, the savings, the variety. What about the actual usage? Were families actually using all that produce and incorporating those recipes and tips from Brighter Bites into their everyday lives?
That's a really good question, and the answer is a resounding yes. Families shared that they loved using the recipes and tips they received from Brighter Bites.
So it wasn't just going to waste.
Not at all. They were finding creative ways to incorporate more fruits and veggies into their meals, making healthy eating a part of their daily routine.
That's great to hear. So it sounds like the program was really hitting the mark during those 16 weeks.
It seems to be.
But let's be real for a second. Maintaining healthy habits long-term can be really tough.
It is.
Especially when life gets busy and budgets are tight.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, what happened after those 16 weeks were up? Did the positive changes stick, or did families just go back to their old ways?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right.
And luckily, Brighter Bites didn't just stop there. They wanted to know what happened next.
Okay.
So they had the families participate in a second round of the Photo Voice project after the program ended.
So this time they were taking pictures and sharing their experiences without those free produce deliveries.
Exactly. They wanted to capture what life looked like once those external supports were gone.
Okay, so the families were back on their own, no more free produce. What did those post-program photos reveal?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. While some of the positive changes did stick, there were some significant challenges that families faced when it came to long-term sustainability.
Okay, I'm sensing a plot twist here. What kind of challenges are we talking about?
Well, remember those $30 a week in savings that families experienced during the program?
Yeah, that was huge.
Once the deliveries stopped, families had to go back to paying for all their produce out of pocket.
I see where this is going.
And for many, those savings disappeared, making it much harder to keep buying the same quantities of fruits and vegetables.
Right, because at the end of the day, say, healthy eating often comes down to affordability.
It does.
And if families are struggling to make ends meet, those fresh fruits and veggies might become a luxury they just can't afford.
Exactly. And it wasn't just the financial aspect. Families also missed the variety they had grown accustomed to during the program.
Yeah. So they were back to their old routines, buying the same limited selection of produce at the grocery store.
Pretty much, which meant less excitement in the kitchen and potentially less motivation to eat healthy.
It sounds like they were facing a double whammy. Tighter budgets and less variety. Did they just give up on healthy eating altogether?
No, actually. And this is one of the most encouraging findings from the research. Even though the external supports were gone, the impact of the nutrition education component of Brighter Bites seemed to have a lasting effect.
So even without the free produce, they were still using what they'd learned to make healthier choices.
Exactly. Families found ways to be creative with their limited resources. They adapted recipes, they sought out affordable alternatives, and they continued to prioritize fruits and vegetables whenever possible.
That's really inspiring. It shows that knowledge and empowerment can truly make a difference.
Absolutely. Brighter Bites wasn't just giving families food, they were giving them the tools and knowledge they needed to make lasting changes in their lives.
It's like that saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime.
Exactly.
But I'm still wondering how Brighter Bites responded to these long-term sustainability challenges. Like, did they just acknowledge the problem or did they actually try to do something about it?
They absolutely did something about it. And their response was even more crucial when the COVID-19 pandemic hit.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. Tell me how they pivoted during COVID.
Well, as you can imagine, the pandemic created a whole new set of challenges for families, especially those who are already struggling with food insecurity.
Yeah, school closures, job losses. It was a really tough time for a lot of people.
It was. And Brighter Bites knew they had to step up their game. So they partnered with medical and public health students.
Oh, wow.
To create and distribute a wide range of health literacy resources to families in need.
So it went beyond food at that point.
It did. They recognized that the pandemic was affecting every aspect of people's lives.
Right.
So they expanded their focus to address the broader social determinants of health.
So it was about providing information and support that went beyond just putting food on the table.
Exactly. These resources covered a wide range of topics.
Like what?
Information on preventing the spread of COVID-19.
Okay.
Mental health support. Strategies for coping with stress and anxiety, financial assistance programs, how to access unemployment benefits, housing resources, transportation assistance, even information on where to get COVID testing and how to navigate the healthcare system.
Well, they were really looking at the whole picture.
They were. They understood that health is about so much more than just the absence of disease.
Right. It's about having access to the resources and support you need to live a healthy and fulfilling life.
Absolutely. And they made sure these resources were available in multiple languages.
That's so important. We can't just assume that everyone speaks English or has access to the internet.
Right. And they used a variety of methods to get this information out to families. We're talking flyers, phone calls, text messages, newsletters, social media posts, even updates on their website.
It sounds like they pulled out all the stops.
They did. They were determined to reach as many families as possible and provide them with the support they needed during a really challenging time.
It's amazing how they took a crisis situation and turned it into an opportunity to expand their impact and serve their community in even more meaningful ways.
It really is. Now, they didn't just stop at families. They also recognized that teachers were facing their own set of challenges during the pandemic.
Yeah, I can't even imagine trying to teach remotely while also dealing with all the stress and uncertainty of a global pandemic.
It was a lot to handle. And Brighter Bites realized that if they wanted to support kids, they also needed to support the teachers.
Makes sense. It's all connected.
Exactly. So they launched a new program called Nurturing Healthy Teachers.
Oh, I like that. So they're expanding their reach to include educators. Tell me more about this program. What was the thinking behind it?
Well, they realized that teachers, especially those working in low-income schools, were often on the front lines of modeling healthy habits for their students.
Right. Teachers are role models.
Exactly. And they saw that many teachers were struggling with their own well-being, including food insecurity.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it just highlights how widespread this problem really is.
It does. So NHT was designed to address those challenges and provide teachers with the support they needed to thrive both personally and professionally.
It sounds like they were really trying to create a holistic approach to teacher well-being.
They were.
Okay, so what did NHT actually involve?
Well, it had a few key components. First, they gave teachers access to the same fresh produce deliveries and nutrition education that they were providing to families.
Okay, so they're getting those healthy goodies too.
Yes. They also created this amazing web-based program called Create Healthy Futures, which focused on boosting teachers' nutrition knowledge, building their confidence in making healthy choices, and promoting mindfulness and social support.
It's like they were saying, hey, teachers, we see you, we value you, and we want to support you in every way we can.
Exactly. And to further foster that sense of community and connection, they also set up peer-led virtual wellness groups.
Oh, that's great.
These groups gave teachers a safe space to share their experiences, support each other, and create a more positive and supportive environment.
It's so important to have those connections, especially during tough times.
It is. Now, you might be wondering about the research.
Of course. How do we know if these programs are actually making a difference? Like, what kind of results are we seeing?
Well, that's where the rigorous evaluation comes in. Brighter Bites has used a variety of methods to assess the impact of their programs, both for families and teachers.
Why, break it down for us.
Well, one of the most interesting methods they used was something called a plate waste study.
Plate waste study? What's that?
Basically, they went into schools and measured the amount of food that was left uneaten on students' trays after lunch.
Oh, so they were literally looking at what kids were throwing away.
They were. It might sound simple.
Yeah?
But it's actually a really clever way to get real-world data on eating habits.
Right. Like, what are kids actually eating versus what they're just pushing around their plate?
Exactly. And this data can then be used to make informed decisions about menu planning, food procurement, and even nutrition education efforts.
Oh, I see. So if they notice that a certain type of fruit is consistently being left behind, they can try different preparation methods or introduce it in a more appealing way.
Absolutely. It's all about making those data-driven decisions to improve the program and make sure it's as effective as possible.
So the plate waste study was all about what kids were eating, but they also needed to assess the broader impact of the program, right?
Right. They also used surveys to gather information on things like dietary intake, physical activity levels, mental well-being, and various health behaviors.
Okay, so they're getting a more comprehensive picture of how the program was impacting people's lives.
Exactly. And these surveys were given to children, parents, and teachers.
So they were getting perspectives from all sides.
They were. And in addition to those self-reported surveys, they also collected biometric data.
What does that mean?
Things like weight, BMI, cholesterol levels, blood pressure.
Okay, so they were looking at the actual physical health outcomes as well.
They were. It was a combination of both self-reported and objective measures to get a really well-rounded understanding of the program's impact.
But they didn't just stop at numbers, right?
No. They also used qualitative methods like focus groups and interviews to really dive deeper into the experiences and perspectives of the participants.
Because sometimes those personal stories can reveal insights that you just can't get from numbers alone.
Exactly. And remember the Photo Voice Project. Those photos and stories really capture the emotional and social impact of the program. They showed how Brighter Bites was not just about providing food, but about bringing families together, creating positive memories, and fostering a love of healthy eating.
It's those human connections that really make a difference. Okay, so we've talked about the programs, the evaluation, the impact.
Yes.
As we wrap up this first part of our deep dive into the world of Brighter Bites, I'm just really struck by the thoughtfulness and care that they've put into designing these programs.
Me too.
They're not just throwing food at the problem. They're really thinking about the whole person and addressing those underlying social determinants of health that we've been talking about.
It's truly impressive.
And the fact that they're so committed to using data to inform their decisions and constantly striving to improve, that's what makes me so optimistic about the work they're doing.
Absolutely. It's inspiring.
So now that we have a good foundation of how Brighter Bites is approaching the problem of food insecurity as a whole, I'm curious to learn more about the specific challenges and opportunities that they face when working with Hispanic communities.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Because we know that this population faces some unique barriers when it comes to accessing healthy and affordable food.
Absolutely.
So in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore those nuances in more detail and see how Brighter Bites is tailoring its approach to meet the specific needs of this community.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how they're addressing these complex issues?
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think what's really impressive is how they're going beyond just providing food.
Yes.
They're really looking at the whole picture, the whole person, and understanding those underlying social determinants of health that we've been talking about.
Exactly. It's not just about putting food on the table. It's about addressing all those interconnected factors that contribute to a healthy life.
Right, like having access to affordable health care, having safe places to be physically active,
Right.
having the knowledge and skills to make healthy choices.
Absolutely. And all of those things are intertwined. You can't really address one without considering the others.
Exactly. It's like weaving a safety net for families and teachers, providing that support system to help them thrive.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of weaving, Brighter Bites has been particularly successful in making a difference in Hispanic communities.
Right. And that's something I wanted to dig into a little bit more, because we know that this population faces some unique challenges when it comes to food insecurity and health disparities.
They do. They're actually at a higher risk for obesity and diabetes compared to other groups in the U.S.
Yeah, that's something that really stood out to me in the research. Why do you think that is?
Well, there are a lot of factors at play. It's a complex issue,
Okay.
but I think socioeconomic disparities definitely contribute.
Right. Many Hispanic families struggle with poverty, limited access to health care, limited access to healthy food options.
Exactly. And then you have to consider the environmental factors as well, like
Yeah.
access to safe places to exercise,
And we can't forget about cultural factors, too.
right? Like traditional dietary practices that might not always align with current health recommendations.
It's like a perfect storm of challenges.
It can be. And then you add on top of that language barriers. If health information and resources aren't available in Spanish, it's incredibly difficult for families to get the support they need.
It's a reminder that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to health interventions.
Absolutely. You have to meet people where they are and understand their unique needs and preferences.
And I think that's something Brighter Bites has done really well. They've made a conscious effort to tailor their approach to the specific needs of the Hispanic community.
They have. They've worked directly with schools and families in those communities to build trust and relationships and to really understand their cultural values and food traditions.
So it's about building bridges, not walls.
Exactly. It's about collaborating and working together to find solutions that are both effective and culturally relevant.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, but let's shift gears a bit and focus on the positive impact that Brighter Bites is having. What kind of results are we seeing in terms of people's actual eating habits?
Well, the research shows that providing access to fresh produce through those weekly deliveries makes a huge difference. It significantly increases both the amount and the variety of fruits and vegetables that both children and parents are eating.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
Because we know that eating more fruits and veggies is linked to so many health benefits.
It is. It's linked to lower risk of chronic diseases like heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, certain types of cancer. It's linked to better weight management, improved gut health, even better mental health.
It's like a magic bullet.
I mean, it's not magic, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And one of the things I find so fascinating about Brighter Bites is how they've managed to make healthy eating not just something that's good for you, but also something that's fun and enjoyable.
Right. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think it's worth repeating. The way they've incorporated those fun food experiences into the program is really genius.
It is. It takes away the fear factor and the intimidation that some people might feel when confronted with unfamiliar produce.
Right. Like I'm much more likely to try something new if I've already tasted it prepared in a delicious way.
Absolutely. And Brighter Bites has done a great job of creating those positive experiences around healthy food.
And remember those photo voice discussions we talked about earlier?
Yes.
One of the things that really struck me was how families talked about the excitement and anticipation of those weekly produce deliveries.
Yes. It became a family event. Everyone would gather around to unpack the bags, explore the new fruits and vegetables, and even try out the recipes together.
It's so heartwarming to hear those stories.
Yeah.
It's like they're turning healthy eating into a fun and engaging family activity.
Exactly. And those shared experiences are so important, especially for kids. It's creating those positive associations with healthy food that will hopefully last a lifetime.
Because let's be honest, eating healthy isn't always easy. It takes effort, it takes planning, and sometimes it takes a little creativity.
It does. But I think Brighter Bites is showing that it's possible to make healthy eating a part of your everyday life. And they're doing it in a way that's both accessible and enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the produce itself,
Right.
right? They're also providing that crucial nutrition education component.
Exactly. They're not just saying, here's a bunch of fruits and veggies, good luck.
Right. They're giving families the knowledge and skills to actually use all that produce effectively.
Yes. They're teaching them how to prepare different types of produce, how to store them properly, how to incorporate them into meals that their families will actually enjoy.
And I love that they're tailoring those educational materials to the cultural preferences of Hispanic families.
Me too. It's about building on what families already know and love, rather than trying to replace it with something completely foreign.
It's a much more respectful and sustainable approach.
Absolutely. It's about honoring families' cultural heritage while also expanding their culinary horizons.
Now, speaking of adapting and evolving,
Yeah.
let's talk about Brighter Bites' response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
Because as we know, the pandemic really exacerbated the problem of food insecurity.
It did, especially for low-income families who are already struggling to make ends meet.
Right. Schools closed, jobs were lost, and access to food became even more limited.
Exactly. And that's when Brighter Bites really stepped up their game. They partnered with medical and public health students to create and distribute those health literacy resources that we talked about earlier.
And those resources were incredibly comprehensive. They went way beyond just food.
They did. They covered everything from COVID-19 prevention tips to mental health support to financial assistance programs to housing resources.
They were really trying to address every aspect of families' well-being during that difficult time.
They were. They understood that food insecurity was just one piece of a much larger puzzle, and they were determined to help families navigate all the challenges they were facing.
It's amazing how they were able to pivot so quickly and adapt their program to meet the changing needs of the community.
It is, and they didn't just focus on families. They also recognized that teachers were under a tremendous amount of stress and pressure during the pandemic.
Yeah. It must have been incredibly challenging to try to teach remotely while also dealing with all the uncertainty and anxiety of a global pandemic.
It was. And Brighter Bites saw that teachers were struggling. They were seeing high rates of burnout anxiety, even food insecurity among teachers.
That's so sad. It's a reminder that the people who are tasked with educating our children are often facing their own struggles.
Exactly. And that's why they launched the Nurturing Healthy Teachers program.
To provide teachers with the same kind of support and resources that they were giving to families.
Yes. They recognize that teacher well-being is essential for student success.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all connected. If teachers are stressed and burned out, it's going to impact their ability to teach effectively.
Exactly. So NHT was designed to address those challenges and support teachers in every way possible.
And they were really intentional about using data to track the impact of their programs, right?
Oh, absolutely. They've been incredibly rigorous in their evaluation efforts. They've used a combination of quantitative and qualitative methods to really understand what's working, what's not, and how they can continue to improve.
So they're not just guessing. They're making data-driven decisions.
Exactly. And they've been very transparent about sharing their findings. They want to be accountable to the communities they serve and show that their programs are making a real difference.
And we've talked about a few of those methods already, like the plate waste study and the surveys.
Yeah.
But can you remind us again what those methods entailed and what kind of insights they provided?
Sure. So the plate waste study, as you recall, involved going into schools and measuring the amount of food that was left uneaten on students' trays after lunch.
So they could see what kids were actually eating versus what they were just throwing away?
Exactly. It gave them valuable data on consumption patterns, which they could then use to inform menu planning, food procurement, and nutrition education efforts.
And then the surveys provided more detailed information on dietary intake, physical activity levels, mental well-being, and other health behaviors.
Yes, they surveyed children, parents, and teachers to get a comprehensive perspective.
And they also collected biometric data like weight, BMI, cholesterol levels, and blood pressure.
Right, to track actual health outcomes.
And then on top of all that quantitative data, they also gathered qualitative data through focus groups and interviews.
Yes, to really delve deeper into the experiences and perspectives of the participants.
Because numbers can only tell us so much.
Exactly. We need those stories and those personal experiences to really understand the human impact of these programs.
And Brighter Bites has done a fantastic job of weaving together those different strands of data, the quantitative, the qualitative, the anecdotal. It's all part of a larger tapestry that tells a really compelling story about the power of this program.
It does, and it speaks to their commitment to not just doing good work, but also making sure that their work is actually having the intended impact.
Accountability is key. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Brighter Bites, I'm just so impressed by their dedication, their creativity, and their unwavering commitment to addressing the complex issue of food insecurity.
Me too. They're truly an inspiring organization.
Yeah.
And they're showing us that it is possible to make a real difference in people's lives.
And they're not just providing a temporary fix. They're empowering families and teachers to make sustainable changes that will benefit them for years to come.
Exactly. It's about planting seeds of change that will continue to grow and flourish long after the program ends.
And speaking of seeds of change, what are some of the broader lessons that we can learn from Brighter Bites' approach to addressing food insecurity and promoting healthy eating habits?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of taking a multifaceted approach. Recognizing that food insecurity is rarely an isolated issue, it's often intertwined with other social and economic factors.
Right, like poverty, lack of access to health care, inadequate housing, unstable employment.
Exactly. So any effective intervention needs to address all of those interconnected challenges.
It's about looking at the whole person and the whole community.
Absolutely. And I think Brighter Bites has also demonstrated the power of partnerships.
Yes. They've collaborated with so many different organizations, food banks, schools, medical institutions, public health programs.
It's about leveraging the strengths of each partner to create a more impactful and sustainable program.
Because no one organization can do it alone.
Exactly. It takes a village.
And they've also shown us the importance of being culturally sensitive and tailoring interventions to the specific needs of the community you're serving.
Right. One size doesn't fit all. What works in one community might not work in another.
So it's about doing your homework, understanding the cultural values, the food traditions, the language barriers, and designing programs that are truly relevant and accessible.
And of course, we can't forget about the importance of empowerment.
Right. It's not about giving handouts. It's about giving people the tools and the knowledge they need to make healthy choices for themselves and their families.
Exactly. It's about fostering a sense of agency and a self-efficacy.
And I think Brighter Bites has done a beautiful job of that. They've created a program that's both supportive and empowering.
They have. And I'm so excited to see what they do next.
Me too. Now, as we reflect on all that we've learned about Brighter Bites and their incredible work,
it makes you wonder what the world would be like if everyone had access to these kinds of programs.
Doesn't it? It's like they've cracked the code on how to make a real difference in the fight against food insecurity.
And they're proving that it's not just about providing food, it's about addressing those underlying social and economic factors that contribute to poor health.
Right. It's about creating a more equitable and just society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
And it's not just about the individual, it's about the community as a whole.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we're all interconnected, that we all have a role to play in creating a healthier, more vibrant world.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most powerful things about Brighter Bites is how they've managed to bring together so many different partners to work towards a common goal.
It's like they've built this amazing ecosystem of support that includes food banks, schools, medical institutions, public health programs, all working together to make a difference.
And they're not just working in isolation. They're sharing their knowledge and their resources and their best practices with other organizations across the country.
So they're not just helping the families and teachers they're directly serving. They're also creating a ripple effect that's spreading outwards and inspiring others to take action.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most important lessons we can learn from Brighter Bites. It's not just about doing good work. It's about sharing that work and inspiring others to join the movement.
Right. It's about building a movement for change that's bigger than any one organization or any one community.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that all of us can be a part of.
I agree. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Brighter Bites, I want to leave you with a final thought. We've seen how food insecurity can be hidden in plain sight. It's often invisible to those who don't experience it firsthand.
And it's easy to get caught up in our own lives and forget that there are people right in our own communities who are struggling to put food on the table.
So I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on what you've learned today and to think about how you can help raise awareness of this issue in your own community.
Whether it's volunteering at a local food bank, donating to a charity that supports food insecure families, or simply having conversations with your friends and neighbors about this issue.
Every little bit helps, and together we can make a difference.
It's been a pleasure diving deep into this topic with you today.
Thanks for joining us. And until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world around you.